Be live. Oh. Let's get started.
Awesome. Oh no.
Do you want to host, Javier?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Okay, so it seems like the first thing that we've done is we've set it to stream. I know we don't have new faces, but I do see Gabe as another attendee.
Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself? I think I might have seen you before, but
Yeah, I'm Gabe from Bloomberg. I work with Zambav, trying to increase our build pack presence, and yeah, happy to be here.
awesome. Happy to have you. All right, the next thing is, do we have any still issues? We actually have quite a bit. I've been thinking about the structure of this meeting, and I'm not sure that going through these sort of laundry list items is the best use of our time. So if it's okay with y'all, Sam and I will basically kind of use this to poke ourselves to get some of this stuff done. And yeah, we could kind of skip this for today. That's all right. Anybody opposed? Right. I mean, you could watch us run through these. The only other PR, still PR, is a draft. So that is good for now. And last but not least, oh, I clicked on the wrong link, is unlabeled issues, which we have done. So we are good there. And then on the agenda, I know I heard feedback for build pack concepts that I think Sam, you wanted to present some of that. And then I have an update on the pack website from our last meeting.
Oh, nice.
I'll throw mine out there just real quick to get some ideas and then really just relay the information. I did kind of spew out a tiny proposal to Joe to kind of get a temperature feel for whether or not that's something that we wanted to do. And he's not opposed to the idea. I think the reception was positive. The only real kind of point of contention is sort of like the capacity and priority of such thing, right? So it seems relatively low, but it is still something that we would have to do. We would have to buy the domain, figure out the hosting, and then actually get the design set up and put everything there and move stuff out of buildpacks.io, update references and pointers. And so yeah, so that was something where it just seemed like it's nice to have and not so much a high priority compared to other things that we have, right? And especially I think because the people in the learning team are kind of the same people that are driving other changes that are probably higher priority. That was kind of my thing, and I do agree with that. So I didn't really have a way to say like, but we have this individual here that would be more than happy to and has all the free time in the world to get this done, right? So yeah, I don't know if there's any thoughts on that. I did see the subdomain, right? If we want to do pack.buildpacks.io.
That should at least help with the domain registration hosting parts. Like I know GitHub Pages allows you to host at least getting something like buildpacks.io/back would be super easy as a separate website. Like you just create a separate doc set or whatever, publish it there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even getting a subdomain might be trivial, I think.
Yeah, I know Steven owns the domain, so I think that would be super trivial. The other parts of the design, the building, and the migration, I think those are the heavy loads, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how to tackle this exactly at this point. I think maybe I'd like to get a more feedback or feelers on how much we need this and what the real benefits are. So I might even just have to think about it myself. There are other avenues, like I know the mentorship programs, they, for web related stuff, there's quite a few candidates there. So I think they'd be more than happy to take that on. It's just marrying it with the design aspect of it that might be challenging.
Just searching my email, there was an announcement that went out for GSOC, right?
Was it GSOC or LFX?
I think LFX ended, but they also sent out proposals for GSOC, because I think CNCF might have gotten their, or just about to get their proposals in line.
Yeah, yeah. So there's something, I know, a mentorship program with a deadline of the 14th, I believe. So yeah, I'm working on, I have some things labeled on Pack that I probably want to add on there, but this might be one of those other things that we could do.
Did we, what's the state of the last mentorship program, the features one?
No, the features, yeah, I guess that's another one. The state of it is there were a few, I would say, adaptive changes necessary, but very, very minor. At this point, I guess you would say like it just needs somebody, one of the maintainers to go in there and polish it up and publish it. I don't know that there's sufficient stuff in there to make it a project for a mentorship program.
So they did complete out all the comparisons we needed.
For like the layout and stuff like that, yes. And then they did a couple blog posts that were published that we could use as references. Yeah, and we could review that. Maybe Sam, you and I could review that and see what the next action items are for that.
Cool. That, I guess, brings us to the next agenda item, unless there's anything else there.
All right, yep. Go ahead, take it away, Sam.
Oh, there was Dan here, but I guess he left. Okay.
We bored him to death so quickly.
So just some feedback on concepts, I guess. So we're like seeing people who are not app developers like now trying to like understand a bunch of build-back concepts. So like from the perspective of the app developer, they're very shielded, right? Like they just know, run this command, set some arguments, you'll have an app at the end of it. That's it. But as someone who wants to dive deeper and maybe create a build-back, I think we've seen like the same points of confusion come up again and again. Some of it is because of terminology. So like as someone new to the project, a lot of the terms sound very similar. So it's like builder, build packs, or like build image. What's like just people, I've seen people call every one of these things build packs because that's like the project name. So they're like, okay, this is what it's doing. Like And I've also seen some app developers call the output image build packs. They're like, I want to create my own build pack, and then they actually mean they just want to create an image using build packs. Um, so, like, as anyone new coming to the project, the first point of confusion they have is like the overload of the word or term build. It's like everywhere, and I think as someone new, it can get confusing. Like after a while, it's fine, you know the differences. But as someone new, they get extremely confused as to what one thing means over the other, and they use things interchangeably. And then when they're trying to follow the documentation, they just get confused. And then this is before they've even reached things like build toml, build pack toml, build plan, and then even build plan has like two different versions. The one that the during the detect, the one that the build packs output, and the other one which is like the one they take in during build.
Even during build part is also
Yeah, the just the build part itself is not. So there's a lot of build stuff, and when they first start with any of this, they just get thoroughly confused as to what's happening.
And we're talking specifically from a build pack author's point of view, right? So like
New build pack authors.
So kind of thinking about it, I'm tasked with, or I'm researching the idea of using build packs to provide build packs for my either enterprise or for a language or some tooling. And I say, okay, let me look at what build packs project is, right? And so they go there and you're saying, okay, so now I have to learn about the ecosystem, or like the sort of like all the components within there, and then say, okay, now I maybe hopefully get it. I have to dive into a build pack domain, right? And so now inside of the build pack domain, there's these other like micro concepts, right? That you have to also know. You have to know when your stuff is executed in the entirety of the life cycle, and what sort of documents, inputs and outputs are necessary for the build pack itself, right?
And what you can even do with those inputs and outputs, like they're just even like if you follow, let's say, a build pack author's guide, we trivially skip over some really important concepts like inter build pack communication, things like how meta build packs work, or like the current build pack documentation is very focused on one build pack acting alone, which is rarely the case.
Right.
I mean, it might have been the case when like it started out with Heroku just detecting one build pack and running it, but like I don't think that's the case anymore. So like things like how detect works, like how build packs in a group are detected rather than a single build pack being detected. Like that I've seen causes a lot of confusion. How requirements and provisions are matched up. What role do they actually play into the build process? How are the requirements actually fed so that the build binary actually resolves it and gets the correct whatever information out of it? I think all of that stuff we don't talk about anywhere. It's just in the spec as abstract concepts. So unless you've looked at one of the existing production build packs, you would have zero idea what to do with any of that.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to understand, is this something that is a higher level issue with the way that the documents and the websites are structured? That something at a high level could help, or is it just really simply the need for the build pack author's guide to have more content provided by the build pack team, sub-team?
I think it's both content as well as us as a project recognizing the fact that a lot of the terms we use are overloaded and they can be very confusing to someone new. We should recognize like if we don't want to change those terms, we should recognize the confusion and address it for a new person coming in to the documentation. Or like just show with examples like, hey, here's what is different about build packs and builders. And like, I think the presenters are currently presented as abstract concepts. So like people will understand it when they read, and like half an hour, 1 hour later, they'll be completely confused again. Like what was one thing versus the other if they don't have something to attach it to.
I know we talked about in the past here. I'm going to share my screen. So I think the part that I'm maybe more focused on is the higher level, initial look of how things are portrayed. So if I were to go here, sorry, not GitHub, sorry, I meant Docs homepage here, right? And then I go into, let's say, concepts. So we're saying that this thing here is talking about a couple things, right? So we've got build here. We've got two things that are doing two builds, I'm assuming here. There's what is a build pack here, very abstract like. What is a builder? And I see that build packs are inside of builders, but we're saying that's not quite sufficient or clear enough. Or is this not the entry point that we see most people take?
I think this has always been a tough one since our concepts are so interlinked, like just finding a leaf node to start with. I think the other thing that confuses everyone when coming from Docker is like everything is stored as an OCI image. Like they think everything that's an OCI artifact is a Docker image. So like just build packs being stored in the registry, or like the build image, the builder, a container image, creating a container image is a very mind-boggling concept for people.
I could see that.
Like once you understand what a builder is doing, then okay, it makes sense. Okay, what's happening? It's not like it's actually creating an image. It's providing the base environment for things to execute. But that completely gets glossed over. They're like, okay, builder is a container image that can build other container images, is what we're saying here.
Yeah.
And then like the other thing that confuses them is like, how it says build packs on the right hand side, like build pack provided layers. Like
Here, yeah.
Yeah. So like to a new person, like they're like, oh, what's happening? Is like build pack copying over some of its stuff there? Like is that itself a build pack in the output image? Because like there's some runtime logic that also gets executed, right? They're like, oh, something is happening during runtime as well. That's magical. Maybe the build pack is there in the final image, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely get all the concerns. I don't know if I'm personally qualified to solve it. That's for sure. I think that's kind of what I'm coming to the realization, right? It's like when there was nothing, I could definitely provide something. But now that there's something and people are saying like, well, it needs to be improved. It's like, okay, well, I don't know how to do that, right? So I guess what are some action items that you could think of for improving them?
I think we are at a stage where like at least our documentation website needs professional help to explain these concepts to people. And like CNCF has that like technical writing, doc redesign, whatever service. I think even if we can't create the ideal documentation, I think we should at least consider doing the prerequisites to get someone to write this. I remember the last time we dismissed it because it had like some prerequisites around like it was just a long form or something. I don't remember.
Oh, what? Sorry.
Like you know how they had you fill a survey about asking a bunch of things before they could find you the appropriate person to write the docs or something. Do you remember the conversation we had when we last spoke about like the CNCF technical stuff?
Yeah. I mean, very vaguely. I think that's been a while now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we I think we are also biased, like we've been in the project for a while, so like we can't see it through the lens of someone.
It's really hard. I'll be honest with you. Like as I was going through this, like, what do you mean? It's like right there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, as you explain, I'm like, okay, I could definitely see where people could be, hung up. The idea of a container, image, creating another container image, that's pretty, crazy.
So, I mean, it's also like while teaching this stuff to people, you realize, oh shit, I never thought that people could like take this concept, twist it, and then try to comprehend it in like this entirely different fashion. And I can follow their line of reasoning. I can completely follow what thought process they would have gone through to reach that conclusion. It's just that it would have never occurred to me.
I think defragging the concepts would be useful to a lot of people. Like build, the word build itself is just for every concept in build text, there is a component called build somewhere, right? And I think that's a confusing thing for a lot of people. Right? Like the fact that the build stack is not the thing that is built, but the thing that builds. And the build pack is different than a builder, which is different than a build plan, it's a lot of build words in there.
So if we remove the word build, it's just pack, and plan, right? I'm being a little, but yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand, or I'm trying to think of what a good alternative would be. Because this being a build system, right? There you go, a build, right? It seems almost natural to think about it in that way, at those different scopes. To me, I think a part is maybe not having a clear sort of like scope of conversation, right? It's like when we're talking about it, because like app developers, right, they shouldn't care all too much about what a build pack is, or what a builder is, or like the life cycle stages and all this crap, right? Like they really only care about the high level order, which is I've got build packs, and they do stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
I mean, I think that works perfectly. Like app developers are happy. It's just that now you have people who want to create build packs and graduate from being someone who just uses it as an app developer to being a build pack author. That change is difficult.
Going back to the idea that we think as our docs being a little muddy for the fact that they're trying to satisfy too many different personas, right? If we think about it from a build pack author's perspective, what would that look like, right? If your focus was like, I want to onboard a new build pack developer, what would that look like? You would have to explain what build packs are, right? And then do you even have to explain builders at all? Probably not.
I would
build packs, the build image, the run image,
Do
That's
they care?
Well, right now for stack stuff related, yes, right? Like they need to know what's available to them for execution.
Yep.
And then from there, all the contractual stuff about the things that they could generate, they could use, the inner build pack communication type stuff. But that's pretty much about it, right?
Yeah. I think for each persona, you should, the first thing they should come to is like a problem they want to solve. Like
Yeah.
as an app developer, if you're coming to build packs, what do you want to do? You want to create production container images. The first thing you want to see is, here's an example of a demo repository, run pack build, nothing else. You get an output image, run Docker run, and boom, you have something that's running. That's my goal as an app developer, to get from my source code to a container image as soon as possible. As a build pack author, my goal is, I have this other language ecosystem or some other functionality that I want to provide as a build pack. How do I do that? So like, I think we should just introduce these concepts in terms of like the solution. So like, we start with the problem, and as we're going through the steps of solving it, we should introduce the concepts to the person then, rather than just being like, here's all the concepts, and then come to the build pack authors guide.
I think it needs to be more of a story, which I think is what you're saying, and I think it needs to map each part to the output that it generates, right? Like when you're talking about the text phase, like what is outputted by that, and why do I care? When you come to the build phase, like what is outputted by that? What do I care? And then you kind of build it up to, this is what a builder is. You know what all the components are, and it outputs this, which is what you care about, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so I have a maybe in that same vein, right? Like I feel like a lot of these, especially for app developers, they are problem focused, right? So like if I say I want to specify the launch process, I can go in here and it'll run me through how I go about doing that, right? It sounds like there's something at like a high level though, right? Like, so for this instance, on this one, we have a build an app, right? And it's pretty straightforward for an app developer. We have a select a builder, select your app, and then just go. For build pack authors, it's literally this like huge create a build pack thing. So I do wonder if maybe for build pack authors, a better approach would be to give them just a very tiny taste of the core functionality, which is, I think what Dan was saying, or it wasn't Gabe, yeah. It's, these are the different phases, right? This is detect, this is build, and that's it. So almost just like these two steps. Detect and build. Right, so that would be like the quote unquote getting started for a build pack author.
Yeah.
So maybe in general, just having getting started components or guides for each one of the different personas would be a good sort of starting point or jumping point. And then from there, obviously, once they understand, okay, so this is quote unquote basic, now I need to do something a little bit more elaborate, right? And so then we get onto all these parts of creating a build pack.
I think we also need examples in other languages. I know Joe deeply cares about Bash, but I find it really hard to write good production quality build packs in Bash. And as a project, the only binding we do support is Go. So I think we should put some examples of how to write a build pack in Go.
Did y'all ever decide what to do with like the whole packet, lib, CNB, and all those libraries?
Packet lib CNB and stuff. So we're with the Keto folks, we've been trying to converge on V2, which combines libcnb with packet. Just waiting for like reviews from Emily, Daniel, Brian.
So that's an RFC, or is that the actual implementation that they're looking for?
Actual implementation.
Okay.
Like
Do you-
the V2 is there. It's like just like they've created some PRs on their side about things that they found weird. We created some PRs on our side that we wanted to remove or deprecate. And I think it's just there out as an alpha. I know the Paketo folks have tried it out, but I think to get to the next step, we need like to get everyone together in the room, have a conversation, like what would it take for you to
Yeah.
like just cut over to this? It's difficult because like Paketo has existing dependencies on libcnb. It's like libpack. Then there's packet, which is the interface they want. Like that's the interface they've come to after like lots of RFCs on their side. Then there's libcnb.
So it sounds like the way I'm understanding this is we're using Bash to be, completely agnostic and kind of just show you what's possible through file system manipulation, essentially.
Yep.
Right? But you're saying it's not production quality, and I would definitely agree with that. And it's probably not the easiest to have to go through this process.
I mean, even Go stuff is not easy if you're new to Go. Like all of those concepts are also difficult, but I think we need some examples of a production quality build pack. What's here right now is it's like it scratches the surface, but like there's not enough you can demonstrate here.
The part where maybe I'll rebuttal a little bit is I don't know that we need production quality build pack examples in the documentation. Typically, a lot of these docs would just scratch the surface. And if you want to look at something production ready, you would go look at actual implementations of things, right? So you could go look at the Paketo build packs, at the Google build packs or Heroku build packs for production ready stuff. I'm just thinking like because there's going to be a lot of robustness associated to it that adds complexity that makes it harder to understand exactly what's going on, right?
I think that's also potentially what makes it harder for people to graduate from this simple build pack to a production build pack. They don't know a process. Like start from here, look at any of the Paketo stuff, you'll be completely lost. Same for Heroku, they've got shims in there to get V2, V3 compared. Again, be lost what's happening.
What about the Google ones? I've never looked at those.
Google ones have like basilisms in there, and they have their own style, right? So there's Basil in the middle, and then there's a wrapper around libcnb that they have, which introduces like some Google specific stuff. Like they have some exit codes and some monitoring and logging stuff specific to Google.
Yeah. So I mean, in my ideal world, it would be like Bash is nice, right? It's agnostic. I see the value in Bash. But it would be nice thinking about it from a new build pack author's perspective, if I had like really like a specific, almost like Go DSL, right? That says like, this is what you do, like a very simple API.
Yep. I think that might solve a few things. Like if writing a production quality build pack was easier than like mangling with Bash. That would make things simpler. And also because with Bash, you need like so many random tools just to manipulate the toml files to behave the way you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things. And I would agree that Go is a pretty good candidate, especially for the ecosystem that we're in, right? Like pretty much everything is in Go or Rust. We could go with Rust too, but I know that one's.
Parents would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be on board with that. I don't think that this is my call to make or our call to make. I think that the part where I think it makes it not possible to do at this point in time is that there is no concrete Go library for us to endorse, right?
Slip CNB.
Is it? Then what about Packet or Packet v2?
I mean, there's no Packet v2 is Packet with some slight changes. The interface remained the same. But I mean,
my understanding with libcnb is that it's mostly just data structs in a really funky API. The funky might be opinionated, but
there's currently mostly just data structs.
Yeah.
So much stuff to do.
The thing that might make people happy, but definitely would increase our overhead, would be like having the option to have both, right? Which I've seen it in some projects where it's like, like you're looking at this, right, and it's like Bash, but then you click and
it's a different language. Yeah.
And then it'll switch it for everything essentially.
I think we just need that for everything. That would also solve our like pack build problem or a marketing problem.
It's just like, this is how you do it in so many different things, but man, keeping up with all those things is the pain.
I mean, just pick one, pick the one you're comfortable with. It's just the defaults that will annoy people and people will bite shit on.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is like, okay, let's say that somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to contribute a new guide for build pack, authors that is, specific to whatever, right? And like, okay, cool, go ahead and do that. But you have to provide it in Bash, and you also have to provide it in Go, and you also have to provide it in Java. I don't know.
I mean, you could skip out certain parts of the guide for languages that you don't have. I think as a project, minimally, we can maintain the Bash and Go stuff. Everything else, it's Bash, because I know Joe would be happy to contribute all those guides in Bash. And
yeah, if we could get a tabbed version and do Go, and then maybe what I guess this is how I would strategize this is like, let's add a little bit of Go in here. For me, honestly, again, I go back to the preference of like maybe not libcnb, but something a little bit more robust and user friendly, which would be the packet stuff. From my understanding, I haven't played with it, but I wonder if that'll bring some concerns.
Yeah,
I don't think it should.
I think people will feel differently. Also because I don't think we as a project can tie ourselves to Packet. When we spoke with them around what their plans were for Packet, and the Keto folks wanted independence on that project to make changes and drive changes as they wanted. So I don't think we as a project can tie ourselves to them.
So they're not being very open source friendly. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they are open source friendly within the context of their project. So like they want to make some changes. They don't want to wait on one of our project maintainers to be like, hey, yeah, that looks good, update it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would definitely argue that that's good, right? It's like KPAC, right? Like I don't know that I want to say endorse KPAC, but we definitely do presentations with KPAC. And
Yeah, but the API is stable, right? Like this is much more deep.
what do you mean by the API stable?
KPAC API, it's stable. We do a simple link. Like if you take a look at the documentation, it's one thing that almost never changes. We've moved to a different API now, but even still the documentation that we have works because like we are on V1 Alpha 2 now. Who's updating this?
I don't know, you are.
But like V1 Alpha 1 still works because how Kubernetes works.
Right, the
Like,
migration, yeah.
yep. So this is low maintenance and it's one spec. And it's exposed at a very high level to an app developer. That's a library that people will be using with lots of public exposure to different functions and stuff. So it's a slightly different story.
But I guess what your concern is the stability of the API that we would be using. You don't think that they would adapt something like Semver and make sure that it doesn't break? Because that would just be, I can make these
Not
sort of,
just break, but also maintain, right? If we're presenting someone like a V1 version here and like that's deprecated, not maintained, and like has security issues, and they're already on V3. Like until we have buy-in from their maintainers that they'll be willing to update the documentation or willing to donate the project, it just scares me to introduce that much documentation from an external project onto our.
I guess personally, I don't agree that we have to own everything.
We don't need to own everything, but we need to have someone accountable, right? Why would they be accountable for this?
Right. I think it's the opposite, and I hear the concern differently, which is they may be moving in such a pace that doesn't make it reasonable for us to keep up with them, right? So if they had a stable API, right, and they produced something and it was golden for a while, it was LTS for lack of better words, right? Then in that case, like the concerns don't exist, right? Like we would create the documentation, we can maintain it and so forth. But it's the fact that they might be moving at a pace that's quicker, that before you know it, will be left behind kind of thing. Yeah, that's a valid concern.
And it's also the difference, like another example is we introduce a new build pack API version. Packet, let's say it doesn't want it because they don't use any features from it. And that's happened in the past. It's not a reference implementation of the build pack API. They have sometimes added partial support for certain APIs, like with the features that they needed in their build packs. They've sometimes just not needed to support an API because they didn't need any of the features in there. So like, let's say we bump up a build pack API version, the bash version's up to date. Now we have to go and update the packet one. How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's unfortunate because I guess what I was hoping for is a more collaborative sort of approach to.
That's what libcnb v2 is meant to be. Like at least that's what we're trying to achieve. Like we've gotten the utilities team on the Paketo side, us the Bloomberg side, and just trying to, and also the Java team on the Paketo side because they have a different library as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then there's libcnb2, which is supposed to be this holy grail. Okay, and that's, I guess, what you're proposing we would use for the documentation.
Once we have that, I would say yes.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. Because then maybe even I can build packs. All right. I know we're a little bit over time. Did we get through everything? Do you feel comfortable with the answers on
Yep.
that? And we didn't get too much concrete stuff, but it was good
In
time.
terms of action points, how open are we to having someone outside of the maintainers help out with the logistics around the CNCF stuff?
What do you mean by that?
Like, there's a process, right, to help us get help.
Okay.
How open would we be to like having someone else be involved in that process? I don't even know if they can be. I'm assuming whatever this is requires access to service desk.
Okay, so what you're saying is something like, let's say if Bloomberg were to were to provide a potential like AKA resource to help out with some of that. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know in the past, VMware had someone, I don't know if you ever met him or saw his name around, Sander, and he was kind of helping with some of that. And it was pretty well received because I think we all know that we're busy. So
Yep.
there will be a lot of pushback. I will also add, this shouldn't be private because there's a job posting out in the public, but we're getting a community manager. So like we're interviewing for a community manager that will be part of the Build Packs IO, Akato, and maybe some of the Knative initiatives. So,
Nice.
so I think I think the hope there will also be that they may help on the CNCF front and a lot of that stuff as well.
Nice.
So just keep that in mind, but I think, definitely need help wherever we can get it.
Cool.
Cool. All right, have a good one.